Welcome in, everybody, to the Boston Celtics newsfeed, part of CLNS Media, the leading online provider of audiovisual coverage for the Boston Celtics. I'm Mike Walsh with the Boston Celtics newsfeed. Cory Prescott's joining me this morning. Hey, Cory.
Hey, Mike. How's it going?
I didn't get a ton of sleep last night. I made a point. I was like, okay, 2 a.m. is going to be my break-off point. I'm going to bed. East Coast here, we kind of get screwed when it comes to the beginning of the free agency period.
Yeah, no, we get screwed with everything sports-related. If like a game starts at 8, playoff game, it ends at midnight. But, yeah, especially last night, even though...
Hey, why can't they just do it at noon? Like, have it start at noon Eastern.
I don't know. If technically it begins at midnight on July 1st, but it really started before then, if you think about it, because there's deals in place. There's tampering going on, so...
Yeah, tampering, a couple trades. So pretty much this morning, Cory and I are going to run through everything that happened overnight, so you guys are up to speed when it comes to around noon, hopefully Eastern time, Saturday before Gordon Hayward has his meeting with Miami today. He's going to meet with Boston supposedly tomorrow and then Utah Monday. So Boston's kind of sandwiched in the middle. We'll talk about a little bit what that means. But let's run through what happened overnight. Things started, let's see, what was first? Was the Rubio move first?
The Rubio move happened in the afternoon. There was a lot of momentum going on that, and then it just kind of came through.
This is a trade, actually, so it's not technically free agency. So they didn't have to wait until midnight to finalize this. Ricky Rubio goes to the Utah Jazz. They trade for him from Minnesota. They give up a 2018 first-round pick, which belonged to Oklahoma City originally, and I understand that is lottery protected as well.
Okay, I didn't see that, but that's not a bad trade if you're Utah. I really like Rubio a lot.
Right.
Minnesota seemed to really try to get rid of him the past couple of years pretty heavily, and I understand he has his shooting deficiencies, but he's a pretty good player, really good defensive player. So I'm not sure why they were.
Excellent distributor, and he played very well towards the end of I saw them in Boston at the Garden for a game, and he was excellent. It was him and Towns pretty much were the entire team, but Minnesota's going to move on. We can talk about what they did to fill that spot, but the bigger meaning out of this is what it means for Gordon Hayward and his relationship with the Utah Jazz. We know that he was pretty good, friends or just, enjoyed playing with George Hill, but Utah was not going to extend themselves, I don't believe, to retain Hill, who's going to make a little bit more than, actually a lot more than Rubio is under contract still for, I think, a couple of years. But what do you think this does for Hayward? Does this push him out the door? Does it say, look, we're continuing to build? I don't know.
It's a nice thing to think about if you're a Celtics fan, that he was so intent on playing with George Hill that he would actually consider moving on just because George Hill isn't in the mix. I really don't think that's the case. I think Gordon Hayward is really going to assess his business options, playing style, what's best for him, and then financially, obviously, that's a big one going forward in the long term. I like Rubio better, actually, and if anything, it might help the Jazz keep Hayward because you add Rubio under contract, I believe around a little over 13 mil per season for the next 2 seasons, I believe. So they can actually add somebody else in free agency along with Hayward if they want to.
Yeah, with everything you read and hear about Gordon Hayward, he seems just like a smart guy who is going to carefully assess all of these things that are happening and knows what it takes to essentially build a playoff team, keep building from what they were. And I think I think it actually helps more than hurts as well. Utah's chances, I believe, just because he's going to see what they're doing, that they're not essentially throwing everything away, even though they're losing out on a pretty good player in George Hill.
If I'm the Jazz, I'm not investing $20 million per year in George Hill.
No. All right, so next up, we're going to go through the deals that are kind of affecting the Celtics. And the big one of last night, I did get a news feed up late last night. You can check that out. YouTube.com/CLNS Media. Nick Gelso did a sweet video for it. That is, Paul George gets traded. This one happened around 10 o'clock last night from the Indiana Pacers to the Oklahoma City Thunder. The return is only, and I mean only, Victor Oladipo and Domantas Sabonis. So there are no picks going back. It's just those two players. Oladipo, a starter in this league. Sabonis, I guess a highly touted prospect who had a rough first year, but not the return that many were expecting the Pacers to get for Paul George.
No, not even an ounce. I mean, Kevin
Pritchard, that's the
Pritchard,
understatement of this podcast.
A week ago, Kevin Pritchard said that he would only settle, or the Pacers were only going to get 3 first-round draft picks and 2 starters.
That was the original. So Jeff Goodman last night, and it's in the podcast from last night, tweeted that at draft day, the offer from Boston, from Danny Ainge, was 3 first-round picks, though neither one were the next year's Nets pick or that pick they got from Philadelphia, which is a Kings/Lakers pick, protected, whatever you. Neither of those were part of the 3 first-rounders, but the other 2 were 2 starters, one of which was Jay Crowder, the other one unknown.
I mean, he must have panicked or something. I mean, because that deal.
Yeah, I do have a take on this. Yeah, I think Pritchard, in my opinion, he just got ticked off at Ainge. I think that's what it was. When you sort of boil it down to who they are, they're humans, and making these decisions. And I think Danny was essentially saying, like, wait, we're gonna do this deal with you later on if you wait and help us. And Danny was essentially asking Pritchard to sit on stuff and help them build this super team. And I think Pritchard just finally said, no, screw you. I'm not going to help you build a super team in my conference. And he said, no, I'm not waiting. Here, get him on. He's sick of Paul George. He's sick of Danny Ainge. I don't know. Pritchard just got sick of people.
Maybe,
yeah, that's my take. Fight, whatever you want to call it. Pritchard just said, to hell with you, Danny Ainge. I'm not helping you.
And maybe that's the case because, I mean, Danny's obviously, his reputation around the league is that he really just bargains and bargains and over bargains until he gets his deal. So maybe Pritchard's kind of just got fed up with the constant back and forth.
Because otherwise I do not understand it.
I don't understand it one bit. Unless apparently he really likes Oladipo, and Oladipo was the number 2 overall pick. I mean, he really could have gone number 1 in that.
Went to Indiana University, yeah.
Yeah, that terrible draft in 2012 or 13, I believe.
Mm-hmm. It's the shocker of the offseason so far, I think. And there's some shockers. Danny Ainge traded the number 1 overall pick like a week ago.
Yeah, this actually, if you think about this, it actually helps the Lakers a little bit because I really don't see any way that George stays with OKC, past next season. And it just so happens that Russell Westbrook is up potentially for a new deal too. Now, obviously, he's from LA, so, I mean, they could potentially carve out space to convince both of those guys.
Anyway, Paul George, again, traded from the Indiana Pacers to the Oklahoma City Thunder. Well, he'll join, as Cory just said, reigning MVP Russell Westbrook. OKC only has to give up Victor Oladipo, who is on from what I understand, a pretty terrible contract, I think $21 million a year over the next 4 or so.
Yeah, exactly.
And Domantas Sabonis, a prospect. Hey guys, quick minute break to tell you about our friends over at HelloFresh. They're the best meal kit delivery service out there. Each and every week, they're creating these delicious new recipes. And here's the best part. They will deliver all of this food in a recyclable, insulated box to your doorstep for free so you can make all of their great meals. And now, listeners to CLNS Media and supporters of this Celtics newsfeed can use the promo code BEAT30 for $30 off your first week with HelloFresh. Support our fresh content and their fresh food. Try HelloFresh for free. Simply visit HelloFresh.com and enter the promo code BEAT30. The other thing that sort of, as I talked about last night in the newsfeed update, Blake Griffin is going back to the Los Angeles Clippers. He was sort of the other big-name free agent along with Gordon Hayward and Paul George, not really a free agent, but big names on the market this summer. So Blake is now off the board, 5 years, $173 million, a huge offer to stay with the Clippers, who recently traded, we didn't mention, but traded Chris Paul. I'm sure everyone's heard that by now. So Blake is coming back, and it's his team now.
Yeah, it really is. 5 and 173. I don't blame him one bit for going back to the Clippers. I really like Blake. I mean, but obviously this is a huge risk, just considering the injuries that have mounted up, and it's just been an assortment of injuries. There's not one nagging one. He's still in his 27 years old, but he's missed so many games. Recently. I think it really just depends on how they use him, because I really think his best asset is his playmaking ability, just the ability to handle the ball at such a athletic, big size for a guy. So if they give him the ball more, he wasn't getting the ball with Chris Paul, obviously.
Right.
So
the offense is going to have to run through him.
It's his team now. And do you think this was Celtics' plan B all along? Like, do you really think they had interest in bringing Blake Griffin to Boston?
I'd say it's probably a distant plan B, sort of a, I don't know, not worst case scenario, but like the last ditch effort if everything does fall through. Which now with this Paul George information, more and more stuff seems to come out every minute since midnight that Gordon Hayward, like, he's been training with the Utah staff. They feel like they have a really strong relationship with him. They go out, they get Ricky Rubio to shore up that spot before they do it. It has to be getting a little nerve-wracking if you're Danny Ainge, that if you come out of this trading the number one pick and you don't get Paul George, don't get Gordon Hayward, so you come out of a summer where you're this big player, supposed to be this big player, you had a 53-win team you're trying to make better, and you come out of it with Jason Tatum. I don't know if I'm comfortable with that. If I'm him, obviously he doesn't have anything to worry about. It's not like I would never call for Danny Ainge's job. He's does fantastic work, but a very disappointing offseason. Now that Blake's gone, and the question here is what the Clippers do next, because it seems like JJ Redick's out the door. He's meeting with a bunch of teams, Nets, 76ers. So he's out the door. Jamal Crawford might be out as well. DeAndre Jordan's an option for some teams, even the Celtics, if they get down that far.
They have to get down or out.
on their list. So the Clippers are an interesting case right now. They throw money at Blake. So it's definitely a commitment to, I guess, that city and that team, I guess, by Steve Ballmer.
Steve Ballmer has the dough. It's amazing how fast the NBA moves. That the Chris Paul trade feels like so long ago. I don't think we really discussed it on CLNS too much. So it's like the news just goes by so fast.
It does, yeah. Chris Paul now down in Houston. The Clippers, actually, I don't mean to sell them short. They did get considering what was given up for Jimmy Butler and what was given up for Paul George, what was given up for Chris Paul was actually a pretty good return, I think, for the Clippers. They get a couple good players and some assets in there.
I mean, not bad at all, considering Chris Paul could have just opted out and just gone wherever he wanted to. All
right, so the other stuff we're going to run through, other things you may have missed overnight. First off, Tony Snell with a sizable deal, 4-year, $46 million, 44 of that guaranteed. He's going to stay in Milwaukee with the Bucks.
And they were pretty. I think they're pretty cash strapped this offseason, the Bucks, but they're able to re-sign Snell. Pretty team friendly deal. They got him in the deal for Michael Carter-Williams, who's pretty much out of this league. Exactly. That's another victory for Hinkie. But now Snell has size, and he's really improved his 3-point shot. And I think, it does say on ESPN that it's a pretty team-friendly deal as far as the overall value of the contract goes. Mm-hmm.
And we had 3 more returning point guards, I guess, So Patty Mills, 4 years, $50 million. He's going to stay with the San Antonio Spurs as they continue on in their offseason. They do not go after Chris Paul as fiercely as we maybe thought they might. So Patty Mills back in San Antonio, 4 years, $50 million. Steph Curry will be back with the Golden State Warriors, 5 years, $201 million. That is going to be the highest paid player ever. He takes the mantle from Mike Conley Jr.
I think he's a little bit better than Mike Conley.
Yeah, it's definitely, I do not care how much you pay Steph Curry. He is worth it, just worth it for what he has brought to that area and that team and franchise. They're almost forever relevant now in sort of the annals of NBA history.
Yeah, with the salary cap, hasn't gone up as much as it was forecasted previously to go up to, but it's still rising. So these type of contracts, these supermax deals that are apparently a new part of the CBA, they're going to become more commonplace. So seeing $200 million thrown around is going to be kind of, I wouldn't say normal, but there's going to be more of them. Outside of Steph Curry, there's going to be more of those contracts handed out. Yeah,
one of them not quite at that level, but definitely a good deal for the player. Drew Holiday will be returning to the New Orleans Pelicans for 5 years and $126 million, if I understand this correctly. That's a high price. For Drew Holiday, who was, I think, an All-Star like 3 years ago. Is that
right? 2012-13, he was on the All-Star. That was with Philly, though.
It's a deal we don't have a ton of time to get into, but definitely an interesting one that makes you... I certainly did a double take at it.
If they fail, obviously the Celtics and Celtics fans need to keep an eye on Anthony Davis and that pick because they're pretty they're to the max right now, and then DeMarcus Cousins comes up, I believe, after next season. Mm-hmm. So I mean, just keep an eye down the road. I know that's why Danny, in part, keeps all these assets or accumulates more assets is to get that big fish down the road.
Mm-hmm. And finally, last one to really talk about real quick here. Jeff Teague will fill the role of Ricky Rubio. So Rubio again traded to Utah. Jeff Teague signs with the Timberwolves for 3 years, $57 million. So a shorter deal there. Still worth some serious dough, but Minnesota's going to be interesting this year. What's your take on them? What do they become with him and Jimmy Butler added to that mix of young guys?
I still really like Rubio, but I mean, obviously Teague is a more proven outside shooter, and the length of that deal actually helps them out. It's pretty flexible. Right. I mean, Minnesota's going to be fun to watch. They don't have a lot of depth, but then again, not a lot of teams have the pleasure of rolling out Andre Iguodala and Sean Livingston off the bench. So there's not too many super teams out there. I mean, Minnesota's going to be fun to watch just with the defensive intensity of Butler. I think now Wiggins can kind of settle into that third banana, that third type of role where he can just really just rely on his scoring. And, Towns' defense, that's going to be in question this season. So if you're really looking for something to watch for Minnesota, just watch how Towns adjusts or how he hopefully improves for their sake on the defensive end.
All right, so now you are fully up to date on what has happened with free agency as of, we're recording this, it's 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time on Saturday morning. Again, we're going to be sort of on call, watching the wire all weekend long here on the Celtics newsfeed, so stay tuned, subscribe on iTunes and Stitcher. Go to the CLNS YouTube page at youtube.com/CLNS Media. Everything will be posted there in a depository. Cory, Prescott, I'm Mike Walsh. Thanks for tuning in, guys. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, guys.